Okay, everybody. Nice to see you on there. Hi, Sugantha. Right as I looked at the TV, she smiled, and so I felt like we were looking at each other in real time. So nice to see so many of you, and to see all of you. I'm hoping that we will have some time at the end to interact a little bit. There will be times when I will be calling out a question and would like to hear an answer. We had, last week we were a little bit pressed for time because of the living wisely, living well, and so there was a lot of things we had to just kind of rush through and couldn't be as relaxed. In this sense, I don't know how relaxed we'll be, but certainly we have a little more time, and in any case, it's the last class, so just time to graduate and enjoy and wrap up. I would have again liked to include a Swamiji video, but we're going to do something with Swamiji at the end of class, so we'll save that for then. Just to jump back into it, we are finishing up chapter 3 of the book out of the 4 whole chapters that there are. And chapter 3 is the procedure, which, as we understood, refers also to the yoga science. Not even good to call it a philosophy or anything else. It really is a science. And so, of course, as yogis, this is the thing we should be most interested in, or at least extremely interested in. Dwapara Yuga is interesting for the whole planet to know actually where we are on a planetary level. Yoga is something we've practiced on this planet in many different time periods and in many different yugas. You could say yoga gets you out of yuga because we don't want to be bound by time. We don't want to be stuck in things like, this material existence. We've perhaps practiced yoga not only on different yugas on this planet, but maybe on other planets. And so, again, yoga is much more eternal. So, learning of that we are in Dwapara Yuga is sort of like learning your PIN code, so you know how to fill out your address correctly. It's relevant, but very specific. And if you move, you get a different PIN code. And so when you reincarnate, you may be in a different yuga. But the yoga will be the same. And so that's, again, that's your profession. I mean, if ever, someone asks, are you employed? You say yes. Are you a professional? Yes. Even if some of you have told me, oh no, I'm just at home, or I am a housewife, it's like, in some cases just like, no, you are a professional yogi. And it has been that way for many lifetimes, I'm sure, for many of you. Okay. So just to recap a little bit of very briefly what Sri Yukteswarji talked about. He begins by one of the things he says is that meditation, I'm on page 62. No, that's not right. Anyway, I'm on some page, the first page of chapter 3. It's not too hard to find if you have the book with you. Meditation on pranava, the divine sound of Om, is the only way to Brahman, or spirit, or salvation. And so we remember this emphasis on the sound of Om, this pranava, with this is more the way Swamiji and Master would say it. But incidentally, the temptation in Sanskrit to translate that pranava as pranaba and to put V instead of B, Vasudeva, and instead of Basudeva, or Bhagavati instead of Bhagavati. That's actually a scholarly thing that Master said was a mistake. Same thing with the Jnana, J-N-A-N-A instead of G-Y-A-N-A. And he said it's just a scholarly thing. In fact, the actual Sanskrit word is neither a B or a V, this pranava. But he said it's not either, but it's closer to a B. So there you have it. So then the next sutra said, Om is heard through the cultivation of the heart's natural love. And remember how satisfying it was that the Jnana avatar, as Shantakumar was saying, is telling us, develop devotion, develop the heart, develop love. That's the principal thing. Why would a Jnana avatar say that bhakti is the most important thing? Well, because jnana avatars and even jnana yogis, like all yogis, are practical. A yogi is eminently practical. He does the techniques. In fact, it's wonderful how a master uses that phrase of Krishna praises the technological yogi. And it's funny because at first it's like, you mean the yogi with a cell phone or yogi with a laptop? No, the yogi who uses techniques that makes him or her technological. And so yoga is very practical. So having all the wisdom in the world, seeing that step one is the heart's natural love, then of course what else are you going to say? That's what it is. And then he also talks about virya, moral courage, and on and on. But again, the heart's natural love is one of these phrases you have to take away from this book. Holy science means the heart's natural love. You can't put one foot in front of the other on the path without the heart's natural love. That's one of the sort of learnings you've got to take away from this, because it comes up culturally at Ananda all the time, and it is the truth. So, then I'm just going through the sutras briefly. Moral courage, virya, arises from the heart's natural love, directing one's love, once you have love, directing it toward the guru. And from affectionately following his instructions. Again, that lovely word, affectionately. So again, heart's natural love and the guru. If you remember nothing else from this whole 5 classes in this book, just remember heart's natural love and the guru. And if you can only remember one thing, then remember the guru. And if you can only remember one word, then remember guru. Swamiji had a brother disciple, he said, who he met in India, a disciple of Master. His only word was guru. Any question you asked him, he would just reply, guru, guru, guru. And Swamiji said it was so inspiring to be in his presence, to see him. It was really uplifting. It wasn't just a cop-out, like, look, if I say guru, it has to be right? No, he really felt that. And so it's quite something. And then it continues, those who remove our troubles, dispel our doubts, and bestow peace are true teachers. They perform a godlike work. Their opposites, those who increase our doubts and difficulties, are harmful to us and should be avoided like poison. Okay, so then, having given us the basics, the foundation, the heart's natural love, and direct it towards the guru, he then goes he mentions the yamas and the niyamas. And of course, these are very familiar to us as professional yogis, and so I won't go further into the explanation of that, but even Sri Yukteswar doesn't break them down. He says we must not only have the heart's natural love, but we must live naturally. And to live naturally, what does it begin with when he asks this question, what is the natural food for man? Remember, we went through the study of the teeth, the digestive tract, all these things to say, eat fruit, which is to say, eat a vegetarian diet. Then he also talks about how the sex nerves get irritated and by poisons or by impurities in the food, and that causes so much trouble that it's actually much easier to regulate that force by regulating diet. It's just amazing, really. Of course, meditation too. And so it's so funny because he spends pages and pages and pages on food and then says, where should we live? Meaning, what's our food? Pages. Where should we live? Better to live in the country than in the city. Om Guru, we do the best we could. Even, Serampore was not much of a city at the time Sri Yukteswar lived there, and Puri probably even less. Very nice open spaces. And the company we should keep, we should be in the company of the Guru and the company of truth. He'll be talking more about that today, so I won't go further into it right now. Then, another thing to remember, the 8 meannesses of the heart. And I won't go through them again because we're going to go through them now, but that's another, going to go through something related, but that's another thing, the 8 meannesses of the heart. Remember, meanness doesn't just mean unkindness or cruelty. In this case, it also means the narrowness, the smallness. A mean amount of something doesn't mean just an average amount if you're thinking mathematically, but what is the mean, the arithmetic mean? But no, what is it's a mean, a small amount. Probably that's where the word mean comes from too, being small-hearted, which is in fact what Sri Yukteswar is saying. And he talked about when you remove these bondages, it leads to magnanimity of the heart, largeness of heart. Remove those things that shrink your heart, and then your heart will expand and you will be large-hearted. Then he says, after that, yama niyama, purifying the heart further, then it leads us to asana, pranayama, and pratyahara, these stages of Ashtanga Yoga. And again, we know about these things from our study of yoga, from Raja Yoga, from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, from our general. I hope it's your everyday dialogue. You can't even go a day without saying pratyahara at least once. Maybe not, but hopefully without practicing pranayama and pratyahara, which is your sadhana. By the way, when do we do pratyahara? Well, you do pratyahara, for example, what are techniques of pratyahara? When you have the eyes uplifted, not the head. See, some people lift their head in order to lift their eyes, like in fact I just did, but no, we lift the eyes up. That directs the attention and the awareness to the spiritual eye. That directs the energy, which is what pratyahara is, directing of energy to this point. And so we have to gather the energy in the brain. So lifting the eyes is a pratyahara technique. Listening, for example, if you do, in the ear is another, again, draws the energy up the spine and into the brain, and that also is a pratyahara technique. Okay, so now we pick up where we left off. And hang on to your hats because we're going into either deep waters or high skies. So, now that we've covered asana, pranayama, and pratyahara, he says, the next sutras, this is, I have the page number. This is page 55 if you have the book. Smriti, or true conception, leads to knowledge of all creation. True conception, smriti can sometimes translate to memory, but true conception in this means sort of having a true concept, having a true understanding, a true recognition of life or of reality, leads to knowledge of all creation. Samadhi, which he translates in this case as concentration, true concentration, enables one to abandon individuality for universality. And isn't that true, that when you meditate with Hong Sau even, it's so often what people report in level 1 or level 2 when they practice it, that it's easier to let go of the ego. They may not say it, I'm abandoning individuality for universality, but they say it's easier for me to listen to another person's point of view without immediately arguing if I happen to disagree. It's easier for me to be patient and to think before speaking rather than just sounding off. It's easier for me to try to understand where this person is coming from and speak to that rather than just tell my own thing. Expanding our sense of awareness, our sense of identity to include others is the first step from individuality toward universality. Hence arises samyama, which is literally translated as restraint or overcoming the egoistic self, by which one experiences the Om vibration, remember this pranava, that reveals God. And so samyama is sometimes, samadhi is sometimes also, this oneness is also given as the word samyama. So they can be, or is it concentration? Anyway, samyama is not a word we use very often, but we could, because we talk about concentration and samadhi all the time. Okay, thus the soul is baptized in bhakti yoga. This is the state of divinity. The bhakti yoga translated as devotion. Okay, so let's go through these things more carefully. And if this is a little hard, my only consolation is it's the last class. It's the last time. Smriti, the true conception. Man, when expert in the above-mentioned practices, meaning asana, pranayama, pratyahara, becomes able to conceive or feel all things of this creation by his heart. This true conception is called smriti. And remember, he's saying, once you practice these practices, you gain this awareness that the practices have a purpose. Even Master tells of that interesting conversation with the levitating saint, where he says, the saint says to Master, when Master was a young boy, you go deep into the silence, but have you attained anubhava, or something like that? Have you developed anubhava? And Master said, in this way, the saint was reminding me not to love meditation more than the goal of meditation. All of our techniques and practices have a purpose, and these are the purposes of them. Samadhi, true concentration. Fixing attention firmly on any object thus conceived, when man becomes as much identified with it as if he were devoid of his individual nature, he attains the state of samadhi, or true concentration. And we talked a little bit about that already. Pranava Shabda, the word of God. When man directs all his organs of sense toward their common center, the sensorium, or Sushumna Dwara, the door of the internal world, he perceives his God-sent luminous body of Radha, or John the Baptist, and hears the peculiar knocking sound, the Pranava Shabda, the word of God. And remember, we talk about Sushumna all the time. That's sort of one of our words, on the spiritual path. And in this case, it's Sushumna Dwara. Of course, Dwara meaning like door. I think it means that. So it's the door to the internal world. Isn't that fun? Because so often we talk about get into the Sushumna. In sort of regular language, we say, get into your spine, get into your center, come be centered in yourself, be in your spine. That all of that means get into the Sushumna, and we can think of it as our center, sort of our core, which it is. But Sri Yukteswar points out it is also the door to the inner world. That means get to the door, then let's open the door, and most importantly, as with doors, you go through the door. That's the goal. Not just to center ourselves in the Sushumna, but to go beyond. But we can begin by centering ourselves there. Now he quotes from the Bible. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This is John the Baptist, the guru of Jesus. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. And so again, it's sort of, they're saying this Om sound, this Pranabha sound was the proof or the witness of God, or of the light, of the divine. And this John the Baptist said, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Again, thank God Sri Yukteswar explains the Hindu scriptures first, explains what it means, and then says, as you can also see in the Bible, which you can see, as I said before, if you know what to look for. Otherwise, it's kind of like, very good. Not sure what it means. Samyama, the concentration of the self. Thus perceiving, man naturally believes in the existence of the true spiritual light. Meaning, if you see the light, then you believe in it. You see? When you feel peace from meditation, then you want to meditate more. And someone can tell you meditation is all false and it's all wrong, and you can say, I know what it does for me. I know how I have had inner perceptions. I know how I have changed outwardly, which is the only real proof of your meditation. And so naturally, Sri Yukteswar says, you believe in it. After you see it, after you witness it, withdrawing his self from the outer world, concentrates himself on the sensorium, the Sushumna. The concentration of the self is called samyama. Finally, bhakti yoga, or baptism, the second birth of man, is the subheading. By this samyama, or concentration of self on the sensorium, getting centered in yourself through meditation, man becomes baptized or absorbed in the holy stream of the divine sound. This baptism is called bhakti yoga. In this state, man repents, that is, turning from this gross material creation of darkness, Maya, he climbs back toward his divinity, the eternal Father, whence he had fallen, whence, remember, from where even it means. he had fallen, and passing through the sensorium, the spine, the door, the Sushumna Dwara, the door, enters into an internal sphere, Bhuvar Loka. Don't worry, it's coming back. Meaning we're going to get to Bhuvar Loka, at least in the book. I hope we get there in reality too. But this entrance into the internal world is the second birth of man. In this state, man becomes Devata, a divine being. And so it's important that Master often spoke of Kriya initiation, for example, as a baptism, or the practice of Kriya, or of any meditation getting into the spine, as the baptism of spirit. He talks about baptisms in Christianity and also in India. They involve, meaning getting into a river. So in India, people will go for a dip, in the Ganga. It's the same thing. It's a baptism. It is going into the water. It's funny because the origin of it, some of it is in the Bible, is that, if a man, they talk about the river of baptism, they're talking about the spine. But people go into the physical river also. In India, it's a little bit different because the Ganga is related to as a holy river. Of course, the River Jordan, which is where the baptism took place, I think that's what it's called. It's in Jordan. It's called Jordan. Yeah, to Jordan came Jesus, the River Jordan. Yeah, all right. Is also a holy river. But the point is, why a river? Because of the spine. It's a symbol of the spine. A flow of energy. In the spine, of course, energy upward. Okay, Sutra 23. And it's given in Sanskrit, and it's translated as, translation the same as the following commentary. So here is the following commentary. The 5 states of the human heart. There are 5 states of the human heart, and this is what we're going to now spend some time on. Dark, propelled, meaning at least in motion, at least in movement, steady, not just in motion, but firm, devoted, and clean. So again, dark doesn't necessarily just mean evil, it's lacking light. Sort of like if you go look at a store and it's dark, it's closed, it's not active. So, but it also can mean the other thing. Dark, inert, not doing anything. Propelled, at least moving somewhere. Steady, meaning moving and firm. Devoted, more love is brought into it and perhaps propelled steady in a certain direction, and clean, which is the goal. Okay? By these different states of heart, man is classified and his evolutionary status determined. Interesting. It all comes down to the heart. Not the surname, not the caste, not Appa's caste, not Gotram, not passport, not IQ, by the state of the heart, says the Gyan Avatar. Why? Because it's true. In the dark state of the heart, man harbors, this is the sutra, in the dark state of the heart, man harbors misconceptions about everything. Don't you love it? Not just misconceptions. We all harbor misconceptions. But with a dark heart, we have misconceptions about everything. You could just stop there and that could satisfy the entire learning. That when the heart is dark, which we don't say with judgment. First of all, none of you have a dark heart or you wouldn't be watching this. You certainly wouldn't have hung on till the end, or knowing, suppose you only attended this last class, you wouldn't be interested. So don't worry about that. But we all have pockets of darkness in our heart. So we're not in any position to, criticize somebody else or say, yes, all those people with dark hearts. Nor should we criticize ourselves and say, yes, my heart is very dark. Even to say your heart is very dark means it's not. Because first of all, you're aware that you even have a heart and that it shouldn't be dark. So, don't worry. On the other hand, when someone is not deeply spiritual, when they are more or less engrossed in Maya, interested in Maya, watching the TV, the little TV and the big TV, they have misconceptions about everything. So why be surprised? if somebody is acting in a worldly way, if somebody is criticizing your preference for the spiritual life, if somebody is trying to just get money out of something or other, if somebody's, misunderstanding you. That's the basic state until we grow more spiritually. And they probably have good points also. Swamiji always saw the good in people. He wasn't unaware of the other parts, but we would often think, Swamiji would give someone a lot of energy, and we would say, just sometimes wrongly, but just why? What does he see in that person? And I was so charmed to hear Swamiji in a talk, in a recording once, say, Master would give all this energy to people, and you couldn't understand what he saw in that person. It's like, that's how we felt about Swamiji. He's saying, that's how I felt about Master. But Master would always say, Swamiji said, oh, he's a very good father to his children, or he's a very effective businessman, or he would point out some good quality. And Master makes that point, that if you know someone and you like them and they do many good things for you, but if they do one strongly bad thing against you, you say the person is bad. And Master said, I don't like to hear people say a person is bad. It's like, he said, as if a piano has one wrong key. You don't say the whole piano is bad, you just change the key. So he said, don't you call people bad, anyone else or yourself. This, in a dark state of heart, man harbors misconceptions about everything. This state is a result of avidya, ignorance, and produces a shudra, a man of the lowest caste. He can grasp only ideas of the physical world. This state of mind is prevalent in Kali Yuga, the dark age of a cycle of yugas. So again, it doesn't even need to be said, but just to say it, shudra obviously is not relating to someone's birth. It's related to someone's attitude, their understanding. As you've heard before, but it cannot bear enough repeating, the son of a Shudra may be a Brahmin. The son of a Brahmin may be a Shudra. Someone with a Brahmin surname may be a Vaishya. It seems to me very common. And so, there's no such thing as hereditary. Master said a hereditary caste. Master said every country has its own misery-making karma, its own particular misery-making karma. And in America, he said, it's the thought that things can give happiness. It's actually, unfortunately, worldwide nowadays. But he said that in India, the particular misery-making karma is when the caste system became hereditary. It's not only hurtful to so many people, but it's also just it's just so false. It's just ridiculous. I mean, supposing, your father was a great mathematician. Does that make you a great mathematician? It does remind me of a joke, though, of a guy who came to a piano lesson, and he was very good at the piano. And he said, this is my first lesson. There's a bigger story to why that, but I won't go into that. And so his teacher says, you're really good at this. Are you sure this is your first lesson? And he says, it is, but I've never played before. But, my father was a piano mover. So anyway, of course, it's a joke. But he can grasp only ideas of, I already told you that. So again, the dark heart. In the dark state of the heart, man misconceives. He thinks that this gross material portion of the creation is the only real substance in existence. Or he thinks money is the only real substance in existence. I'm throwing that in myself. And that there is nothing besides. However, this is contrary to the truth, and has been explained before, and is nothing but the effect of ignorance, avidya. You see, if somebody thinks that this material world is a reality, why wouldn't they think that? It's just ignorance. It seems obvious at first. That's why the whole Sankhya philosophy was created, to say there is something beyond this physical existence. Well, you only have to say that if somebody thinks there isn't. You see? There's no scripture on why joy is a good thing or why we should eat Mysore pak. Everybody knows that because you do it once and you love it. Or you have joy and you just feel joy. You don't have to know why. You just know, I want more of that. So scriptures and teachings are given to help correct misunderstandings. because the obvious conclusion is that this physical world is the only thing. So if somebody is saying that, the reason why as devotees we say, don't do that, is because it reminds us of when we used to think that way too. And it almost is a pull back in that direction, whereas we're trying to affirm, I don't think that way anymore. Because when you're calm, you don't mind if somebody thinks that way. It doesn't matter to you, because you're sure of what the truth is as well as you've understood it, and you know there's more to the truth that you haven't yet understood. So you can relate even to their misunderstanding. And even if they poke at you and criticize you, what's bad for the ego or displeasing to the ego is pleasing to the soul. It's, if nothing else, it's just a good exercise for us in our peace of mind and our self-control. Swamiji at one point said, I am no stranger to persecution. I sprinkle persecution on my breakfast cereal each morning, meaning just it's such a common thing now. And it's a good training for us. This world is not our home. Anytime something happens you don't like, remind yourself, this world is not my home. I have a home. It's when we think this world is our home and it's not all that great that we feel sad. But this world is not our home. This world's purpose is to get us to our home, but to get us there permanently, not just on a short vacation in between lifetimes. Now, he speaks of the Shudra or servant class. Interesting, he doesn't say other things, he calls it the servant. Why? In this state, man is called Shudra, or belonging to the servant class, because his natural duty then is to serve the higher class of people. Why? Because the higher class of people need servants, and obviously these people would be the servants? No. And you probably can relate to that well. Probably if you have had help at home, you might not have it. And if you are eager to get your help back, restrain yourself. It's not safe right now for that. So, they serve the higher classes in order to secure their company and thereby prepare their own hearts, the Shudra's hearts, to attain a higher stage. This is something that people get wrong philosophically sometimes. They say that if you have a Shudra mentality, for example, it even says in a misexplanation of Master's Gita commentaries, it wasn't Master's mistake, it was somebody else's mistake that inserted it in there before publishing it. Not Ananda's version, but the other version. It says that if you have a Shudra mentality, these are the kinds of things you can do to grow spiritually. Master didn't say that because if you have a Shudra mentality, you're not motivated to grow spiritually. That's the sad part. And as I said, all of us have parts of our hearts that are dark. I don't mean evil, I mean inert. We have Shudra parts of our personality. Like you may be very devoted to sadhana, but when someone says, let's also do some physical exercise, no thanks. Or why don't we try eating more fresh fruits? Can we have a chana bhatura along with that? Just sort of, I can't really grow in that direction right now. So that's how, again, it doesn't become a judgmental or critical thing of those people. We see it in ourselves too. But the point is you don't want to change. I knew of someone recently, I was just thinking about it, where the husband said to the wife, so the wife told me, the husband said, I want to eat a better diet like you do, and I want you to be my coach. I want you to hold me accountable. And I told her, that's never going to work. I mean, you can't live with your coach. It becomes annoying, first of all, to the coached and the coach. And besides, the only person who can really make a change in oneself is oneself. We have to have that inner push to do it. No one can make us do it. And so, not at all, not in a lasting way. It's so tempting to say, can't you just change me? Can't you just correct me? I mean, I wish it could be done, believe me, but we have to do it ourselves. And so, again, remember that too, not just for Shudras or whatever, but think of us. That when we mix with, for example, Swamiji, Master, people of higher states of heart and evolution than we are, it inspires us to grow just by being around them gradually. It inspires us to change. So we've had that experience, and so we can relate that in this case too. Again, without a judgment. People just are where they are. you see? And so, okay, he continues. First he says, with a dark heart, someone with a dark heart is in this Shudra class or servant class, not even motivated to change. Then he comments about Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, the dark cycle, or the dark part of the cycle. This state of man is called Kali, and whenever in any solar system, man generally remains in this state and is ordinarily deprived of the power of advancing beyond the same, the whole of that system, that solar system, is said to be in Kali Yuga, the dark cycle. Isn't that fun? Because we think of Kali Yuga as something that happens on Earth. He's saying it happens everywhere. If you have a planet and most people on that planet have materialistic consciousness, that planet is in Kali Yuga. Wow. I mean, do all other planets go through all 4 yugas? Are some planets just permanently in one particular yuga or another, sort of like a jail or a heaven, depending on which yuga? It's something to think about. But when the way he judges it is not by saying galactic center or here's the calendar. He says if mankind in general has this dark-heartedness, then that planet is a dark planet. It's a Kali Yuga planet. Fantastic. I love it. In any solar system, lest we get too fixated on this particular planet and think it's the whole of everything. Next sutra is 25-26. Passing beyond the first stage in Brahma's plan, man, the Shudra stage, man strives for enlightenment and enters the natural Kshatriya, warrior caste. Tricked you there, didn't he? Because you're maybe thinking Vaishya. But he talks about Kshatriya. He is propelled, because remember, the heart also is propelled. There was dark and then propelled, by evolutionary forces to struggle for truth. He seeks a guru and appreciates his divine counsel. Thus, a kshatriya becomes fit to dwell in the worlds of higher understanding. So, Sri Yukteswar now says the propelled heart. When man becomes a little enlightened, he compares his experiences related to the material creation gathered in his wakeful state and his experiences in dream, and understanding the latter, the dream, to be merely ideas, begins to entertain doubts as to the substantial existence of the former, the waking state. You see, realizing that your dreams weren't real, then you begin to wonder, well, what about all this? Is this real too? Because the dream seems real when I'm in it. As Master said, he would have a dream, and every night a tiger would come and break his leg. This is how he tells it in one of the audio recordings. And he would wake up and he would say, the tiger has come, and his mother would say, no, it was just a dream, you're fine. And he would say, no, mother, there's nothing you can do. This time I assure you, my leg has been eaten by the tiger. And then she would see, look, son, you have a leg still. And he would say, oh, okay, it was just a dream. But then he says, but mother, it pains. Isn't that interesting? My leg hurts still, left over from the dream or whatever. And so just as false as it was, and yet it produced the feeling of pain, so this dream too produces all kinds of feelings of pain. It is our reaction. It is not the dream, no matter how terrible. Sometimes it is terrible. I'm not saying it's not terrible. Master said God made this dream and made it a nightmare so that we would all run to his eternal presence. You see, you don't want the dream to be good, then you just spend time in the dream. Just sleep all day instead of waking up and spending time with Divine Mother. Doesn't that sound more fun? His heart then becomes propelled to learn the real nature of the universe, and struggling to clear his doubts, seeks for evidence to determine what is truth. And this is something that you've heard me say and Swamiji say, referring to what Swamiji said. Another word for devotee or pure person on the spiritual path or spiritual aspirant is truth seeker. To be a devotee, you have to ask what is true, and you have to care what is true. That's why if you talk to someone, and as someone said to Swamiji, it all may be true, but I'm just not interested. That person is not a devotee yet, because they say, even if it's true, I don't care. Whereas a devotee, even a scientist, and in fact the man telling Swamiji this was a scientist, strangely, has to care about what is true. It's not just something we make up. And it matters to us whether something is real or imagined, true or false. And on the other hand, if somebody is a devotee, is so-called, but doesn't care what is true, isn't honestly evaluating their own experience and so on, not harshly, but truthfully, truths in an effort to seek the truth, then they're not a devotee either. And on the other hand, if someone is an atheist, but is doing that, holding that philosophy in order to find out what is true, then that's a good step towards, finding God even. The problem with being an atheist is to say, I know there's not a God, versus at least agnostic says, I don't know if there's a God. But if you know there's not a God, what did you do? Survey everyone, check, make sure each one of them wasn't God, and then say, now I know there's not a God? It seems to me you'd have to be a God to know that there wasn't any God. So anyway, but never mind. One of the beautiful things Swamiji gave when questioned about atheists by someone. She said, what about atheism? What would you say to the atheist? And Swamiji said, I would ask, are they happy? And she said, well, I've talked to some of them and they say they are happy because they feel they are being true to their understanding. They are honoring what they've experienced. Because they are, and Swamiji interrupted her and said, and I can say that I am happy without having to say because. Okay, Kshatriya, the military class. It's hard getting through this book very quickly. I can't see why. It might have something to do with all these digressions. Kshatriya, the material class. In this state, man is called Kshatriya, or one of the military class, and to struggle in the manner aforesaid becomes his natural duty. You see, we're all Kshatriyas, we're all warriors fighting to uncover the truth. Remember that. Master said he was Arjuna. So we are all disciples of Arjuna in that way too. So of course you're a warrior. I don't mean at home. I just mean in life. By whose performance of these duties he may get an insight into the nature of creation and attain the real knowledge of it. Now, Sandhishtala or Shandhishtala, like Shandhya, this word, or Sandhya, meaning like twilight, the place between higher and lower. This Kshatriya state of man is called Shandhishtala, the place between higher and lower. In this state, men, becoming anxious for real knowledge, anxious, that's the key word, it matters to me, need help of one another. Hence, mutual love, the principal necessity for gaining salvation, appears in the heart. Mutual love, the principal necessity. He said, according to the state of one's heart, men are classified. And Swamiji said this too. He said, I didn't love Master because he was perfect. Meaning Master was perfect, but that wasn't what made Swamiji love Master. Didn't make Swamiji follow Master. He said, I followed him because I loved him. He said, the devotees who grasp the spiritual path with their hearts are in a different class altogether from those who come to the path for other reasons. You see, you have to grasp with your heart. If you feel you do grasp with your heart, you have to grasp with your heart more and more deeply and calmly and more joyfully until you find God. That's the path. And if you feel you don't really grasp with your heart, or if you say, no, I don't like the heart, I go more by mind and whatever, fine. But go by mind and heart. Find a way to develop your heart. If you can't understand how to do it, just chant. Remember, Master told Swamiji, get devotion. And then Swamiji just chanted hours a day. And in that found his heart's devotion, which was inherent, the heart's natural love just overflowing. Find a way to open your heart. It puts you in a completely different category. Motivated by the energetic tendency of this love, man affectionately keeps company with those who destroy troubles, clear doubts, and afford peace to him, and hence avoids whatever produces the contrary result. He also studies scientifically the scriptures of divine personages. Now, subheading, when man finds Satguru, the Savior. In this way, man becomes able to appreciate what true faith is and understands the real position of the divine personages when he is fortunate in securing the God-like company of some one of them who will kindly stand to him as his spiritual preceptor, Satguru, or savior. I mean, it's interesting because people will ask, why do I have to have one guru? Can't I have many gurus? And can I draw from all different paths and so on? And let it be noted that Sri Yukteswar says, the godlike company of some one of them. Following affectionately the holy precepts, he learns to concentrate his mind, directing his organs of sense to their common center in the sensorium Sushumna Dwara, the door of the internal sphere. There he perceives the luminous body of John the Baptist or Radha and hears the holy sound, Amen, Om, like a stream or river, and being absorbed or baptized in it, begins to move back toward his divinity, the Eternal Father, through the different lokas or spheres of creation. And this is where we get burned and caught a little bit, because I got caught. In the first chapter, there is a big exposition of the different lokas, the 7 lokas or regions, which I opted to skip over. And Sri Yukteswar catches us in chapter 3 saying, Loka! And I think we didn't get away with it, or I didn't get away with it. So here we go. The worlds or lokas of creation are 7. Bhu, Bhuvar, Swar, Mahar, Jana, Tapo, and Satya. This earth and the earthly stage of man's consciousness are called Bhu-loka, the first one. Okay, we might as well get into it. The 7 lokas. In the way toward divinity, there are 7 spheres or stages of creation. You can think of it as 7 planes or levels of existence, or even levels of consciousness. Designated as swargas or lokas by the Oriental sages, as described in chapter 1:13, which we sort of skipped over. These are Bhuloka, the sphere of gross matters. That's the loka you know. Swarloka, Bhuvarloka, the sphere of fine matters or electrical attributes. This is still something we can see present on Earth on a subtler level. We know that there are such things as electricity and so on. Swarloka, the sphere of magnetic poles and auras or electricities. Well, we do know a little bit about physical magnetism. We know a little bit about the human body's magnetic field or aura, so this is still within reach. Maharloka, the sphere of magnets, the atoms. Okay. Janaloka, the sphere of spiritual reflections, the sons of God. So now we're just having to take his word for it. Tapoloka, the sphere of the Holy Ghost, the universal spirit. He lives in a different loka than other people? Okay. And Satyaloka, the sphere of God, the eternal substance. I love that phrase. Sat. Okay. So the first 3, okay. The fourth one, sort of, I've heard of atoms, and then the other 3 is above our pay grade. Of these 7 planes, the first 3, Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, and Swarloka, comprise the material creation. Isn't that interesting? He said Bhuloka was this earthly existence, but actually the first 3 are visible on the material plane in some way, which is also known as the kingdom of darkness, Maya. And the last 3, remember there are 7, so the first 3, yes, are visible on the material plane. The last 3 comprise the spiritual creation, the kingdom of light. And Maharloka, the sphere of the atom, being in the midst, being in the middle, so the fourth one is in the middle, is said to be the door, communicating between these 2, the material and spiritual realm, and is called Dasam Dwara, the 10th door. Sort of, okay, there are 10, where there are 9 other doors. He doesn't explain, but I have a feeling, because it's the gateway, and because 9, the body is said to have 9 doors, 9 apertures or 9 openings. And so because of that, I'm wondering if that's what this refers to as being the 10th door, but that's just a theory. And it's also not only called the 10th door, but it's also called Brahmarandra, the way to divinity. So, Just if you can't relate to that, relate to it in terms of chakras. There are the lower 3 chakras, which are said to be the sort of worldly chakras, the matter-bound, the materialistic chakras. The first chakra, its element is earth. Just like the first loka, bhu-loka, is this earthly reality. But all 3 generally take the consciousness down towards matter. The upper 3 chakras we often talk about as heart, throat, and spiritual eye. But of course there are 7 chakras, so you can really talk a bit as throat, and then whether you say you want to say Agya chakra and the crown chakra or whatever, no matter what, there are 7 chakras if you include the medulla. That's what we tend to do instead of including the sahasrara. In any case, the heart is the fulcrum. It's in the middle. From the heart, the energy can either go up or down the spine. In fact, as Swamiji was told once by a saint, he said, "I'm feeling great love and cleanness in my heart." And Anandamoy Ma said, "Be careful, because from the heart, the energy can either go up or down." And so in the same way, this Mahar Loka, this 4th Loka, like the heart chakra being in the middle, is the gateway between the materialistic lokas and the spiritual lokas. Okay? What does it all mean? Is it even valid? I don't know. It's just a way of trying to relate it to something we sort of do understand, to make it more familiar. Entering Bhuvarloka, the second one, which literally means air or the world of becoming, man becomes Dvaija, or twice born. He comprehends the second portion of material creation, that of Dvija, I guess it is. Anyway, he comprehends the second portion of material creation, that of finer, subtler forces. This state of mind is prevalent in Dwapara Yuga. So it's like, is it Dwapara Yuga? Okay, no, I know Dwapara Yuga, age of energy. So if we are going from matter to then thinking of energy, then that means we're in Dwapara Yuga. Okay, all right. So suddenly the second loka starts to become more understandable. Dvija, or twice born. When man becomes baptized, begins to repent and move back toward the Eternal Father, and withdrawing his self from the gross material world, which is Bhuloka, enters into the world of fine matter, fine meaning subtle, harder to grasp, which is Bhuvarloka, he is said to belong to the Dvija, or twice-born class. In this state, he comprehends his internal electricities, the second fine material portion of the creation, and understands that this existence of the external is substantially nothing, but mere coalescence or union. He's going to go on, which I have to explain. But basically, remember, we discovered at the beginning of Dwapara Yuga, Einstein on behalf of us, we could say Einstein told us what the Indian sages had told us, but that we forgot, that matter is essentially energy. That matter isn't real, it's a manifestation of energy. It's a vibration. And you can see that. It's not only through him, but through... I think it was de Broglie that said every atoms have a vibration. Light has a vibration, and we see that different vibration in the different colors of the spectrum. The red vibration of light vibrating more slowly than the violet, for example, and then ultraviolet, so fast we can't even see it, and so on. That atoms have a specific rate of vibration too. And so science is agreed on this, that matter is really energy. That's why we're in Dwapara Yuga, or vice versa. Because we're in Dwapara Yuga, we finally figured at least this much out. Or figured out at least this much. So, now let's get back to the man. He understands that the existence of the external is substantially nothing, but the union of his fine internal objects of sense, the negative attributes of electricities, with his 5 organs of sense, the positive attributes, through his 5 organs of action. And sort of like, what, and what? See, this is where we get caught again. Because you remember that wonderful diagram that I showed you of the astral body composed of 19 elements, and I even sent it on WhatsApp saying, see how we're not going to ever understand this, and let's not even try, and we're going to skip over the 19 whatevers. Well, he catches us again. So why? Because why 19? There are 5, you can think of it as your powers of your astral body has the power of hearing, the power of taste. In other words, even if you are deaf physically, you can still hear the Om vibration. And why? If your instrument is damaged, it doesn't damage your astral body's ability to hear. That's why, for example, people who have been blind and died and they come back and tell us about it say that as soon as I died, I could see again. Because they're in the astral body and the astral eyes were working fine. So we have the 5 astral senses, we have the 5 physical senses, and then we have what he calls the 5 organs of action. And these relate to elimination, assimilation, the digestive, the basically 5 systems of the body, which I'm not going to even try to remember. So 5, 5, and 5 is not 19, but 15. And then where does the other 4 come from? Mon, Buddhi, Ahankar, Chitta, which of course you may remember, and if you don't, sorry. But that's the mind, the blind mind, the intelligence, the ego, this is where they're located, and the chitta, the feeling. So that's where you get 19. Okay, so the union of all of these 5 organs of action with everything else is caused by the operation of his mind and conscious. Basically, it's consciousness. I understand that everything I think is real is just my perception of it. And that's why Master said movies are such a great illustration, because you can see a movie and think that it's real, because it looks real. And he said this is not just a 2-dimensional movie, which just has sight and sound, but this is a 5-dimensional movie that has also taste, touch, and smell. So of course it's a virtual reality. That's why that's another good illustration, because you living in this body is really a virtual reality machine that gives you the impression that something's happening. You see, so that's what we understand in Dwapara Yuga. The steady heart. This state of man is Dwapara, and when this becomes the general state of human beings, naturally, in any solar system, the whole of that system is said to be in Dwapara Yuga. Isn't that interesting too? The whole of the system. Not just a planet in that system, but the whole system. Remember, astronomically, the yugas change according to the sun's position, closer or farther to the galactic center. So Jupiter is in Dwapara Yuga. Not that I recommend you visit there, because you'll get crushed. And, Mars is in Dwapara Yuga. All the planets are in the same yuga. Isn't that fun to think about? If not, I'm sorry. You are trapped, because I find it fun to think about. So, in this Dwapara state, the heart becomes steady. So we are in Dwapara Yuga, so we should take note. Have as a goal a steady heart. If man continues in the baptized state, remaining immersed in the holy stream, he gradually comes to a pleasant state where his heart wholly abandons ideas of the external world and becomes devoted to the internal one. And so think about that. In Dwapara, man, let's say it again, abandons the ideas of the external world and becomes devoted to the internal one. So here we have a little question that may arise in our minds that, okay, in Dwapara Yuga, man abandons the external world and is wholly devoted to the internal world. And we are in Dwapara Yuga, and yet I can't say that that's what I'm seeing all around me, that everyone is abandoning the ideas of the external state and are focused on the internal world. Well, we are in very early Dwapara Yuga. This is Kuti Dwapara, you see. So Kali Yuga is not yet done. It is still screaming, trying to fight to be in the driver's seat. That's part of what you see going on with this virus. Some people choosing not to believe in the virus. Some people not wearing masks as a protest against the virus, to which the virus replies, by all means, don't wear a mask. Someone told me that it was time for lockdown to end. I said, did you, because the government has decided, I said, did they ask the virus? Because the virus is the only one who gets a vote in the matter. It's not something decided by elections or parliament or anything else. And lo and behold, see where we are. It's quite sad. And as you probably have seen, we now know people, not just numbers of cases in Chennai, but we know people who have had not only relatives or friends infected, but also died from the virus. Not just physicians, I don't mean just, but I mean, we knew of physicians who had died, and that was tragic because they died in the line of duty, but non-physicians also. And so it's becoming very immediate and real. And so let us be careful. Let us be not afraid, but practical, cautious, and so on. Wear a mask. Okay, so we have another question. If in Dwapara, why does someone wholly abandon the idea of the external world and become devoted to the internal one? Because the man realizes that the internal world is the only true world. You see? So why concentrate on something that's not real? That's like, again, wanting to sleep all the time just so you can write down your dreams and live in this dream world. Or read books about life only rather than living. I mean, imagine just reading guidebooks about different countries without actually going there. You could read enough and become such an expert on the guidebooks that people could mistakenly think you were some kind of expert. That's what it means to read all the scriptures without practicing yoga, without doing what the scriptures say to do. You become a connoisseur or aficionado of guidebooks, an expert on guidebooks. Look, fine, better to read those than to read nothing. But doesn't it awaken in you a hunger to go to those places, to taste that food that no description will ever give you the actual experience of? A yogi is impatient with all of this theoretical armchair philosophy and says, I must experience. It doesn't disregard the experience of the saints. That's a great inspiration and motivation. But I want that for myself too, is what the yogi says, and gets tired of too much of talk. And so, one more thing about in Dwapara Yuga, man abandons the outer world and focuses on the inner world. Well, does he just sit and gaze at his navel? No, because again, the internal one is a real one. When we think of it in the other order, Satya Yuga descending into Treta, descending into Dwapara, descending into Kali Yuga, it's interesting the way the Egyptians portray this. They say in the highest age, God rules man. God himself is basically, it's all in pictures, but God sits in the throne. And so on the as it descends, which the Egyptian age went more through this descent and then was finally wiped out in Kali Yuga. In Treta Yuga, when it descends, they show God is holding a king. And the king is ruling, but God is holding the king. And so at least it's like not God directly anymore, but at least God is so available, so close that he's holding the king. As it descends further, though, into Dwapara Yuga, now the Dwapara, then there's a picture of a king on a throne, but there's the God's head by his ear. To say that, well, the king isn't being held by the God, but he can still hear the God. And so at least it's something. And then finally, the fourth stage, they just show an empty throne with the king kneeling in front of the empty throne weeping because he can't even hear God anymore. You see, and that's what it would be like when you descend, is that you came from a better time and now you live in a worse time and you have a memory of that better time. It doesn't always make you cry. If you can hang on to that memory and follow it, you can be free. In a certain sense, you could say that's what we're doing now, remembering what the great yogis have said and trying to follow it. Luckily, the great yogis come back, and so we don't just have to remember. They tell us anew. But still, you can then see how as we ascend back up, the man starts out, he doesn't weep in front of the empty throne. He walks away and forgets there even is a throne. He loses it at all. But then he sort of rediscovers that there is no one driving this boat. And then in Dwapara Yuga, he starts to hear the God again. This isn't the Egyptian thing. I'm just extrapolating mentally. So we start to hear God again, and we realize there is a reality beyond this outer reality. And that's why we devote ourselves to it, because it is the reality. Do you see what I mean? It's so subtle how Maya tricks us into saying, no, this is the real world. No, it isn't. Remember, Sri Yukteswar said it's a wholly mistaken idea to think that this unreality is reality. Every time I put the book down, it changes pages. I must hit it. And so it keeps me on my toes, trying to remember now exactly where were we? Okay, here we are. Next sutra. In Swarloka, heaven, man is fit to understand the mysteries of Chitta, the magnetic third portion of the material creation. He becomes Vipra, nearly perfect being. This state of mind is prevalent in Treta Yuga. Okay, so that's the next yuga. Let's see if we have any hope of understanding it. The devoted heart, remember, dark heart, propelled heart, at least it's moving now. Dwapar Yuga, the steady heart, and then now Treta Yuga, the devoted heart. In this devoted state, man, withdrawing himself from Bhuvarloka, the world of electric attributes, comes to Swarloka, the world of magnetic attributes, the electricities and poles. He then becomes able to comprehend Chitta, heart, the magnetic third portion of creation. This Chitta, as explained in chapter 1, which we skipped and got caught, is the spiritualized atom, avidya or ignorance, a part of darkness, Maya. Man, comprehending this Chitta, becomes able to understanding the whole of darkness, Maya itself, of which Chitta is a part, as well as the entire creation. Man is then said to belong to the Vipra, or nearly perfect class. This state of human beings is called Treta. When this becomes the general state of human beings, meaning everybody on the planet, in any solar system, has this state, that system is said to be in Treta Yuga. I think it'll take a little more time for us to really understand this, meaning we'll have to wait for Treta Yuga. You see, we could pretend to understand, but it's starting to get a little bit just to becoming words, at least for me. And so, what I would say is, in terms of lokas, there's still, the point is not to get from this loka to the next loka. The point is not to get from Kali Yuga into Dwapar Yuga, or we wish it were Satya Yuga. The point is to get out of this whole existence, all yugas. It's not just loka. I was trying to think of a way to say it. All lokas, all places, are still not God. Loka, L-O-K-A, you can also pronounce loka. Lock. We're all locked in. I think Prasanna is either laughing or weeping. I can't tell. I think either response would be appropriate. But you see, it's all a laka. We're all just trapped in this prison. Get out. There are 7 prisons. Well, the sphere of God can't be called a prison. But any of these other lokas, forget it. Just get out of the lokas and get to God. That is always the point. There is not 7, forgive me, Sri Yukteswar, there are 7. But that is not the goal. The astral world is not the goal. The causal world, if it's still apart from God, is not the goal. God is the goal. To find God. That's it. That's where you're headed. And keep your eyes focused on that. Or to put it more in this context, let's keep our hearts focused on that. Okay, next sutras. Not merely reflecting but manifesting spiritual light, man rises to Janaloka, the kingdom of God. And that's interesting because the moon is often, given the example that it reflects the light of the sun. It doesn't have light of its own. And so similarly, we reach a certain stage where the devotee, let's forget about normal people, non-devotees, that is to say, never mind. The devotee no longer reflects the light, or the disciple even, not only reflects the light of the guru, but actually, as he says, manifests that light. If you think about it, we all shine with reflected light on a physical level. You can only see anything and another person if you have a light source in the room. The light bulb manifests the light. But everything else you just see because the light comes from that source, bounces off of something and hits your eye. And so it's all reflected light. Anything you see, except a light bulb, is by reflected light. But there comes a point as devotees, as we start to grow, where some of that light starts to come through us, I think is a way I would put it. We manifest the light not because we are a light source. A light bulb, even, as you know, is not a light source. It really is the electricity, the hidden power behind that then makes the light shine. And so in the same way, God and the Guru begin to shine more through the disciple. So remember that when you see someone with a light shining through them, of course we are attracted to that. But remember, it's really the electricity that powers the light bulb. It's really God and Guru that powers the devotee when they radiate light. And remember that too, if you are the light bulb, don't think that you are the source of that light. It's such a common trap of the ego on the spiritual path to say, see, now I manifest light. See, now I am the healer. See, I prayed for this person and they got well. It's just another trap. It's just the same as gold chains and, Innovas and all the other material traps. Innova is fine, but, they're all chains, though of gold, still bind. And so in the same way, this is a spiritual path chain to think that I did this. I am now spiritual. God is spiritual. And it doesn't mean we're unspiritual, but we don't mention ourselves at all. Just concentrate on the goal. Then he passes into Tapoloka, the sphere of Kutastha Chaitanya, or the Christ consciousness, abandoning the vain idea of his separate existence. Vain idea. Now what does it mean, vain idea? It could mean prideful. Vain can be pride. So he has the prideful, egoistic concept of a separate existence. But vain can also mean hopeless or pointless, meaning false. And so look, you don't have a separate existence. That's good news. He enters Satyaloka, wherein he attains the state of final release, or Kaivalya, oneness with the Spirit. And remember, the title of this book that Sri Yukteswar gave it is Kaivalya Darshanam, translated as the Holy Science. But here he uses that word, Kaivalya, or Kaivalya right here. And the commentary is for another time. Because again, once you get out of the first three lokas that we have some hope of understanding, then you get to the fourth loka, which we're sort of passing through, to worlds unknown. And so you're welcome to read it yourself, 65 and 66. And that is the end of chapter 3. Unfortunately, let me just see. I think that we can get through some of chapter 4. It's very short, actually, but I do want to end because I want to have time for discussion for those of you who have survived this far. And also at a certain point, the brain, like a sponge, reaches a saturation point and can hold no more. But if you squeeze the sponge for a moment and just start afresh now on chapter 4, which is the revelation, or a brief summary of the Vedanta philosophy or the Vedanta truth, it's actually quite understandable given our common words of yoga that we use. So it says, adeptship or expertise or liberation is achieved through purification of man's 3 bodies. It is also attainable through the grace of the Guru. Isn't that nice? Because we have to purify the 3 bodies. Okay, which are the bodies again, and what are the purification methods for each? And are there 14 ways to purify or the grace of the Guru? Just stick to the Guru, and you'll be fine. But stick to him. You see, that's the difference. Purification comes through nature, penance, and mantras. Okay, we might be able to understand that. Penance is a little bit strange. We'll get there. Through nature, there is purification of dense matter, the physical body. Through penance, purification of the fine matter, the subtle body. Maybe it means the astral body. I don't know. We'll see. Through mantras, purification of the mind. Now, again, we might have a hope of understanding this a little. Adeptship is attainable by the purification of the body in all respects. Purification of the material body can be effected by things generated along with it by nature. So eat well, eat fruit, all these things. That purification of the electrical body is by patience in all circumstances. Isn't that wonderful? Because he says penance, and it's like, oh God. Because penance just seems like, I was really wrong, and 1,000 lashes, and I don't really like penance. But patience? People don't like patience either, but they see that it's useful, and it's attainable, and it's attractive. Patience in all circumstances. And that's such a good word, because we could say be calm in all circumstances. That's the goal. When you are calm in all circumstances, you've arrived. Patience, calm looks like this. Patience looks like this. I might be mad. I might want to say just one simple little word back, but I will be patient. I will be self-controlled. I may feel a certain way, but I will behave properly anyway. As Swamiji said of devotees, he said it of leaders, but it's true of devotees, but especially those in leadership, meaning parents, teachers, anybody leading anybody, even leading ourselves. A leader would do well to control or at least conceal his emotions. In this case, the disturbed emotions. I don't mean if somebody gets you a gift and you're so happy about it, you go, I practice non-acceptance of gifts. No, you conceal. If you can't control how you feel, at least conceal it and say, wonderful, that's fine, Orimsha, and run out the door and scream or do something. But conceal. It's the first step, you see, and it's a great step. Okay, patience in all circumstances. And we control the mind, the magnetic body. Isn't that interesting? The magnetic body he gives is subtler than the electric body. We get a little hint of that because the energy age is Dwapara Yoga and the magnetic age is Treta Yoga. So somehow magnetism, the way he uses it, is more subtle than energy. That was purified by mantras, remember? So what does he say? He says, by regulation of the breath, which is called mantra. What? Well, I thought regulation of the breath was pranayama, and I thought mantra was just Om Namah Shivaya. Wait a minute. Regulation of the breath is called mantra, the purifier of the mind. Now that's really important, because sometimes people would ask here and ask at Ananda, and people asked Master, what is our mantra? Give us a mantra. If you initiate us, if you give us Diksha, what's the mantra that we should say? Now, on a simple answer to that, Swamiji said we can say Om or Om Guru. If you want a mantra, that's our mantra. But people would pressure Master saying, give me a mantra. Why? Because I talked to a bunch of other people and they all have mantras. And when they got initiated, somebody whispered a mantra in their right ear and so on. You know what Master said? He said mantras like that belong to a lower age. He didn't give mantra initiation not because he didn't know about it, but not because of anything, but because he gave something better. He said, you only practice mantras when you don't have pranayama. You practice mantras when you don't yet have kriya. You see? So why go backwards? But because it's so popular and because people will look very serious as they practice their mantras, people sometimes get seduced by popularity. They get seduced by what other people think, and they say, well, gosh, I feel inferior to what all these other people are saying, even quite loudly. Silly. You don't need a mantra, you have kriya. It's more powerful than a mantra. Who says so? Master. Okay? I don't mean you have to bother anybody with that and tell them that, but you don't have to feel lesser. Come on. And the other thing is that even pranayama, sometimes people will say, for example, in level 2, forgive me if you are in level 2 right now, but why don't we make a big thing of practicing all the pranayamas, the breath exercises that are given, even in the Raja Yoga book, the level 2 book? Why don't we do more Lom Vilom, and why don't we do more of the the Kapalabhati pranayama, even that one you have to be careful with, but even the Sitkari and Sittali, why don't we do more of these kinds of pranayamas? And Swamiji said, I put those pranayamas in that in that course because I knew people wouldn't have Kriya yet. He said, Master didn't emphasize pranayamas all that much, and I wanted to give the students something to practice, but really only because they didn't have Kriya yet. Okay, so sometimes when you see like such a big, oh my God, this pranayama, and now we will do asana and pranayama, and I don't know the pranayamas that well, but see how this person, good for them. But again, you don't have to feel lesser because you have the Maha Pranayama of Kriya Yoga. If you do, and if you don't, get it. Okay. Through the holy effect of mantra, the pranava or om sound becomes audible. That's a good thing. The sacred sound is heard in various ways according to the devotee's stage of advancement. And I can't help it. The devotee's stage of advancement. Yes, of course, who is more advanced, who is less advanced? This saint is more advanced than that saint. I'm interested in how advanced this person is because really, secretly, I want to say how advanced I am compared to these other people. Advanced. Who is advanced? I'm advanced. I'm third stage initiation. I have a certificate that goes on the wall. There's even there was a course in avatar training that was being advertised. And another wonderful, that was, I don't know where that was, but in America there was one advertisement for meditation. Meditate like a guru or your money back. You know, it's just amazing where yoga and Maya intersect. But what I will say is this. What does Sri Yukteswar say? The sacred sound is heard in various ways according to the devotee's stage of advancement in purifying his heart. That's the whole sentence, you see. Spiritual advancement, how advanced, how high, how realized are we, how advanced are we in purifying our hearts. Okay? That's it. Okay. The next sutra. One who cultivates the heart's natural love, remember, obtains the guidance of a guru and starts his sadhana, the path of spiritual discipline. It has already been explained what Satguru is and how to keep the company thereof. Man, when endowed with the heavenly gift of pure love, naturally becomes disposed to avoid the company of which is asat, not true, and keep the company of what has been described as sat. By affectionately keeping the company of sat, he may he may be fortunate enough to please one who may kindly stand to him as his Satguru or spiritual preceptor. By keeping his preceptor's God-like company, there grows an inclination in the disciple's heart to save himself from the creation of darkness. So again, just as Sri Yukteswar was saying, the Shudra, keeping the company of higher beings, starts to develop that inclination in himself or herself. So we, disciples, keeping the company of the Guru, start to incline. That's what I saw in Swamiji. The more time I spent with him, the more joy I felt, and the more I wanted that joy all the time. So of course the desire was to be with him all the time, if not physically, at least in listening to his voice, reading his words, and watching his videos, but also because I developed that inclination to gain that in myself, or to grow that in myself. By the practice of yama and niyama, the 8 meannesses of the human heart disappear. And so it's like, oh my God, there are 8 meannesses again. So one was fear, and there was something about smugness, and the famous one, pride of pedigree. But what were the other 5? Look, just do yama and niyama and you'll get out of them. Okay? Virtue arises. Man thus becomes sadhaka, a true disciple, fit to attain salvation. And so as he says, even though you're following a guru, still the 8 meannesses of the heart have to vanish before you become a disciple. And then man becomes fit for the practice of ascetic posture and the other processes, pranayama, pratyahara, pointed out by his guru. He progresses in godliness, hears the holy Om sound, and becomes a siddha, divine personage. Okay, so let's talk about a siddha. let's not, because it's just too much. It's sort of like, we can read about it and it's inspiring, but it's not something I can relate to yet on a personal level, but you're welcome to read it. If we had more time, I definitely would. Okay, and speaking of more time, we have negative 10 minutes, because I'm already over the time that I wanted to stop. So I am going to skip to the end now, because especially once he talks about the different powers of overcoming darkness and ignorance, the anima, you can make your body as small as you like, you can make it as big as you like, as light as you like. Wow. Well, Krishna did all that. You may remember hearing those stories. And, when you're at that level, you can ask Krishna to teach you. Finally, conclusion. And this is beautiful, because Sri Yukteswar begins the conclusion, this is page 77, with a quote in English from a poem by Sir Walter Scott, The Lay of the Last Minstrel. Lay, I think, means the story or the tale of the last minstrel. Minstrel is musician or singer. And so it says, "Love rules the court, the camp, and the grove. The men below and the saints above." Grove and above are spelled similarly, though they don't rhyme when you say them aloud, and poets can get away with that sometimes. "For love is heaven, and heaven is love." Sri Yukteswar writes, "The power of love has been beautifully described by the poet in the stanza quoted above. It has been clearly demonstrated in the foregoing pages that love is God." And of course, you have to admit that this is a little bit funny, because Sri Yukteswar, in this very deep scripture, at the very end of which I had to just bail out, he says, I have shown in the foregoing pages that love is God, or God is love. And so it is often another one of the things you have to get from the holy science, that we all kind of laugh, not at Sri Yukteswar, but at ourselves, that it's sort of, whew, and loka this, and anima that, and nidhi dhyasana, and all that, and at the end, God is love. Whew. But he says, love is God, not merely as the noblest sentiment of a poet, but as an aphorism of eternal truth. In other words, it's not just beautifully said, but it is the only truth. To whatever religious creed a man may belong, and whatever may be his position in society, if he properly cultivates this ruling principle, naturally implanted in his heart, he is sure to be on the right path, to save himself from wandering in this creation of darkness, Maya. Save yourself, he says. It has been shown in the foregoing pages how love may be cultivated, how by its culture it attains development, and, when developed, through this means only, how man may find his spiritual preceptor, through whose favor he again becomes baptized in the holy stream and sacrifices his self before the altar of God, becoming unified with the Eternal Father forever and ever. Heart's natural love. Someone says holy science, you say heart's natural love. Okay? That's the answer. This little volume is therefore concluded with an earnest exhortation to the reader never to forget the great goal of life. In the words of the illumined sage Shankaracharya, and he quotes something here in Sanskrit which is written, life is always unsafe and unstable, like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. The company of a divine personages, even for a moment, can save and redeem us. Now, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something you've heard? I hope it is, and in some cases I know it is. That the drop of leaf, water on the lotus leaf is unstable, and so life is unsafe and unstable. And you might have heard the second one phrased this way, even a moment in the company of a saint can be your raft over the ocean of delusion. See, Swamiji would quote that all the time. And Master, I believe, would quote that. I haven't heard him quote that, but I believe Swamiji said Master quoted that. But in any case, Sri Yukteswar just quoted that. So whenever we've heard that even a moment in the company of a saint can be your ocean over your raft over the ocean of delusion, that's actually what Sri Yukteswar put in here, quoting Shankaracharya. And then if you piece it together further, if you happen to remember, Swamiji said, he said that that's actually a reference to a little song or a little chant that he in fact chanted. And many of you have heard this. It's the Ananda Anandam chant. And so, in fact, knowing that, it's the second lines of the chant, which is in fact written here in the Sanskrit. You know, if you can maybe not read it, but you can imagine Sanskrit written here. And of course, the lines are Nalini Dalagata Jalamati Taralam Tadvad Jivanam Atishaya Chapalam. That means life is always unsafe and unstable like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. Kshanamapi Sajjana Sangati Reka Bhavati Bharvanavatarane Lonoka. Don't worry, you're going to see this again and we're going to hear it. And that is even a moment in the company of a saint can be your raft over the ocean of delusion. And you can read it. I mean, if you can read Hindi, you can read Sanskrit, or at least well enough. And, you know, I can read Hindi barely, but I could, and I know what it was supposed to say, and it says that. Just what I said, and is sung in the song, is the Sanskrit sloka that's put here. So every time we chant that Anandam Ananda song, it's not only quoting Shankaracharya, it's from Bhaja Govindam actually, but it's this song, it's quoting Sri Yukteswar's quote as the last thing he says in the Holy Science. Isn't that nice? That something, you may say, what are you talking about? You're going to find out in just a moment. I'm going to play it. But that this whole time we've been so close, it's all come from, yes, Shankaracharya, but also Sri Yukteswar. Do you see? Anyway, I find it very satisfying. So let's listen to that chant. We'll put the words up in English. Remember, the first ones, why don't you put the words up so I can refer to it? Prasanna's going to put it up here. The chant is often referred to as Anandam Ananda, because those are the first two words. It's actually interesting. The first line's Anandam Ananda, and by the way, the Sanskrit portion of our program is about to conclude. So don't worry. But yeah, don't play it yet, but put the slide up. So the first lines here that you see, I'm pointing at the TV, but I'll just point at your screen or whatever you're seeing. The first four lines you see, Anandam Ananda Karam Prasanam, which is of course so wonderful because of our Prasanna here, Jnana Swarupam Nija Bodha Rupam, and then Yogindra Nidram Babaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Twam Aham Namami. That's actually, it's interesting. Those are lines from the Guru Gita. The Guru Gita is written by Vyasa. But then the second lines are these lines that I've just been referring to from Shankaracharya, from Bhaja Govindam. So maybe this is a popular song. I only know it through Swamiji. But maybe it's a song where these two different, things are combined. And we'll go over the meaning in just a moment. But let's pause the meaning and just enjoy the chant. Okay?
Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nija Bodha Rupam Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nija Bodha Rupam Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami Nalini Dalagata Jalamati Taralam Tadvat Jivanam Matishaya Chapalam Nalini Dalagata Jalamati Taralam Tadvat Jivanam Atishaya Chapalam Kannamapi Sajjana Sangati Reka Bhavati Bhavanavatarani Noka Kannamapi Sajjana Sangati Reka Bhavati Bhavanavatarani Noka Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nija Bodha Rupam Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nija Bodha Rupam Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami dalagata jalamati taralam tadvat jivanam atishaya chapalam nalini dalagata jalamati taralam tadvat jivanam atishaya chapalam kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani nuka kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani nuka Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nijapotarupam Anandam Anandakaram Prasannam Jnana Swarupam Nijapotarupam Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami Yogindra Midyam Bhavaroga Vaidyam Srimad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami Dalagata jalamati taralam tadvat jivanam atishaya chapalam nalini dalagata jalamati taralam tadvat jivanam atishaya chapalam kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani nuka kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani nuka kannamapi sajjana sangati reka bhavati bhavarnavatarani nuka.
So, just to give a little bit of a translation or a way that we can remember vaguely what the meaning of this is tomorrow, when it all sort of sails out of the mind. I couldn't find a word-for-word translation, but some of the words are words we know. And so when we hear this is just sort of a poetic translation. I always bow to Sri Guru, who is bliss, who exudes delight, and who is cheerful. His very nature is knowledge, and he is aware of his own self. He is highest among the yogis and is adorable. He is the physician for the disease of worldly existence. Don't you just love that? He is the physician. We are sick, we are needing to heal, let's go to the physician. And so when you look at the words, it starts to work, because especially, unfortunately, the last words are what's given here. I always bow to Sri Guru, but that's the last line. Sri Mad Gurum Tvam Aham Namami. So, okay. So basically, being in joy, being cheerful, I bow to the Guru. So it'd be nice if it was translated a little more in the same word order, so it'd be easier to follow. Anandam Ananda. Listen, if you don't know the word Ananda by now, which is the name of our spiritual path, so we know that one. So Karam, we get delight, and Prasannam. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Prasannam right now. But yeah, cheerful. So that's one word we'll always, so we hear, okay, these are qualities of the Guru. Jnana, no problem, knowledge. Swarupam, he is aware of his own self. Then we start to get lost. Yogindra, it says he is highest among yogis. Well, Yogindra, he's the Lord of yogis. You see, what a wonderful word. And isn't it wonderful that yogis is in the song? You see, because who are yogis? You are yogis. And then, Nidya Babaroga Vaidyam, okay, never mind. Srimad Gurum Tvama Ham Namami. Okay, I bow to the Guru. Okay, so again, that's from the Guru Gita by Vyasa. And then, these next lines, so we know what they are, because life is unstable. It's like the drop of water on the lotus leaf. Life is similarly unstable. Even the moment in the company of a saint can be your raft over the ocean of delusion. Well, how do we get that? Nalini. What is Nalini? Lotus. Nalini means lotus. And so we have lotus, okay, I remember lotus, and then jal. There's jalamati, but jal, okay, that's water. So the water lotus, I remember. It's the thing of the water on the lotus, and it's unstable. And so then, tadvad jivanam. Tadvad means like in the same way or similarly like, which you hear tadvad a lot. I don't know, maybe you don't, but it does mean that. Jivanam, life. So we've got lotus, water, so is life. I get it. It's enough to remember what it means. And then the chapalam is fun. I think of it like the life is unstable because the chapels, they dance. Life, like shoes, is unstable. Anyway, I'm getting too silly now. And then the second lines, how do they remind us that it means even the moment of in the company of a saint? Well, because they come after the lotus and the water one. I'm not really sure it was Reka, the barge in the ocean. Just remember that first the life is unstable like the water on the lotus, and then even the moment in a company of a saint can be your raft over the ocean of delusion. Okay, everybody, that's it. So if you would like to comment, either something you liked about Sri Yukteswar's book or the experience of these classes, how it helped, or you could share how it hurt. I'm sorry, I'm hoping it didn't. But then also, if you have any questions or anything at all you'd like to share, anything about the song, I'd like to hear from you. Okay, you're daring me to call on you to say something. No, you're jumping in. Shobha.
Yeah, I like the part when they say that it is like water on a lotus leaf. So that means that it looks really nice when you have the little drop on that, but then it is not attached to that leaf. It is floating, and therefore we need to be like that, attached detachment. That part I really enjoyed because I find that is the way that is a very nice simile yes used.
Very good. Very good. I'm glad. It's nice to have something from Shankaracharya too, and Bhaja Govindam, and Sri Yukteswar, and Swamiji all at once. Remember, the drop of water is beautiful on the lotus leaf, but not according to the drop of water. The drop of water is frightened because at any moment it can just slide right off the leaf, or and so on, and so are we, until we're in God. So, okay, Ritu.
Good evening, Dharmarajan.
Good evening.
Yeah, a very nice class again. And Sri Yukteswar ji, he covers almost everything about life. He covers everything. I think if we follow this book, we can always be on the right path because he talks positive and only positive. So all the good things, all the essence, whatever we have to follow, whatever we have to do, what we shouldn't do. It's something amazing. It's such a small book, and he covers everything. So really thankful to all our gurus, Sri Yukteswar ji, and you, Acharyas, Ananda, everybody. Thank you. Dharmarajan ji, I have a question. Now, you spoke, I'm sorry, Sri Yukteswar ji has written about the seven lokas. Now, is it that we have to take several incarnations in each loka to reach the final goal? Is it something like that?
I don't know. I think the truth is probably yes, but our goal should be no. Just get to God in this life through this loka and be done with it. Because again, too much concentration on the lokas can lower our sights from the final goal. I think it's a temptation, maybe not for all, but yeah. So these are questions best asked once you're in those lokas. I mean, Sri Yukteswar did say, I'm at Hiranyaloka, and anybody who enters the Nirvikalpa Samadhi state can come visit me. And I would love to visit him. I wouldn't say, I want only God. Sorry, Sri Yukteswar, I'm not stopping at your house on the way. I'd love to stop at his house and stay. But still, we still have to remember, even when we visit him, he's going to say, that's nice, go to God. Then we really will be one with Sri Yukteswar and Master and everybody else. We want to be in the state they are in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dharmarajan.
Thank you.
God.
Okay, Gopal and Sugantha. I'm sorry, you shouldn't have turned your camera on. Can we mute everybody else? Go ahead.
It was very interesting, and it was so nice listening to you explaining the book. So now lot of things I could assimilate from the book and about the whole path itself, and the takeaways like about meeting to the right guru, and then the following affectionately, and then um, one more thing. Um, yeah, that, about the love, about the heart's love, about the importance of heart's love. So these are the essence, I think, um, of the book, the whole book. Other things are definitely above, you know, comprehension. So many things it can be. It can sit there for some time, and then actually the essence of the book is understood.
Good.
And thanks so much. It is very nice.
Thank you for coming and being here generally. Okay. And from your Zoom mate?
It's such a small book, such a big topic, made as simple as possible by you. I don't have extra words for this, because otherwise I would not have even touched this, but for your class.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have touched it either except for my class.
So, as you said, no, the natural love, that's those such catchy phrases. Definitely, now today that I heard it many times. But today only I had the patience to go through that. I mean, such a beautiful way Shankaracharya put it, and the fifth Vishwa highlighted it. So it's I wish probably this session got extended by a few more weeks. Then only the whole essence you will be able to catch. But anyway, this is the best done. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you, Gopal. And thank you for our other interactions that we had directly and indirectly through Prasanna today. So, yes. Who is this? Gana Saraswati. Yes.
It's been a very wonderful class all these years. Thank you so much. And I like this phrase especially today when you said that Swamiji says, one has to be happy without saying because.
Yeah.
That was very deep and wonderful.
Isn't that great? Yeah. I'm so glad. Thank you for highlighting that again, and nice to hear from you. Okay, Purni.
Ji, how will we know whether the purity of heart's love is ascending or descending?
Well, I would say one way, I don't mean to always give the same answer, but it holds, is you just look in the mirror. And if you see a bright, radiant, relaxed, cheerful face, your heart's love is ascending. And if you see something else, then be careful. But even without a mirror, we can feel it, that when our heart is open, joyful, full of love, we naturally enjoy that. And when we think a wrong thought or we say a wrong thing, and there was nothing wrong with I said. No, I didn't say it in a bad tone of voice. I was just saying a fact. I said it calmly. We try to justify a wrong thing that we did. We feel a pinch in the heart. We feel, I'm not as happy. I was smiling and I'm not smiling. Or we find ourselves, our voice starts to sound a certain way. It starts to sound tight. As Jesus said, out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Your very tone of voice can give away the state of your heart. But the fact of it is, your general trajectory, your general direction is up. Just practice Kriya, love God, seek satsang with other devotees, and you'll be just fine.
Okay. Thank you, Ji.
Just as you're doing. Thank you.
Helping us understand something so difficult. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Bonnie, it sounds like you would like to say something, and so would your colleague there, your grandchild.
Good evening.
Good evening or good morning.
What shall we do next week?
Yes, good question. So now that we finished the Holy Science, we're going to study the Skanda Purana. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have a favorite Upanishad? You know, we won't have class next week, but next Wednesday. But we will, if you have an idea for a class that you would like, this is for all of you, please just send me either a WhatsApp message or an email saying, I would be interested in a class on such and such. I will compile those ideas, and if any of them resonate, I'll suggest them, and I'll also talk to Dharmini, and we'll think of what the next Wednesday class topic could be. And then probably what I'll do is, if I can assemble 2 or 3 ideas, I'll send them out asking what you all think. If you'd like, we could even vote on it. Or like this class, I didn't take a vote, I just decided the Holy Science. And anyway, it seemed to work out. But so please do give suggestions. I may take a survey, in which case please vote. And then we'll see what happens, not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday after, I hope, will be when we can start the next class series, because I'd like to.
What
Okay,
I
Ba?
understood from the Holy Science class is that purification of the heart is very important. And we will follow our Guru affectionately, and we will reach that stage, completely purified.
You have just summarized the 5 days of the class in just one sentence, and that is the point of the class and the point of the book. And so that's absolutely true. And if I just said that in the beginning, the class could have been a lot shorter, because that's all it is, just what you've said.
I think it finally boils down to that we have to work on ourselves.
You are right. The heart and the Guru. Yep.
Heart and the Guru. Guru is there to help us always.
Yep.
Our grace is lacking. Our 25%.
Well, you sat through all 25% of this class and more, so yeah, that's something. Yeah, practice Kriya. So nice to see you. It's so fun to be connected this way. When you had said 4 months or whatever, we could hardly believe it. Now it's been 6 months, but if we see you once a week, it's no problem.
It's better. I can see you more.
Yeah.
Online.
Forget Tambaram. Yeah. Yeah.
This is much nearer than Tambaram.
Much nearer than Tambaram. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Ashwini, madam, any comment or question about all of this?
Thank you, Ji, for your sessions, and I start from, I think, the first or second chapter, the fanatical attachment to material possessions, that still sticks in my mind, that's still there.
What is that phrase?
The attachment to...
The blind tenacity. Yeah, Prasanna just said. The blind tenacity. Yeah. Is that it?
I think it all comes down to that, it boils down to that. I think that's the ultimate thing that we need to the tenacity has to slowly loosen in us.
Absolutely. I was just looking for it again because it really, thank you for bringing that up. It really does stick out.
Very powerful, yeah. That one statement is very powerful.
And that's the best thing about this book, is that we can, even you can get one thing as a key and then follow that all the way to its end. Here we are. The darkening power of Maya produces egoism and blind tenacity. And he says the blind tenacity to the belief in the validity and ultimate worth of this material creation. That is false. The blind tenacity to the belief in the validity and ultimate worth of which there is none of this material creation, except what we become through it. Very good. Thank you. And nice to see you. Okay. Aprama? Yes, Shantakumar.
Thank you, Dharmarajan. Thank you so much for the class. As usual, you made it much simpler. I would say like Sanjaya explaining it to the Dhritarashtra.
Yeah.
That simple.
I'd say similar in spirit, the way a snail is similar to an airplane. But yes, I appreciate it.
So as like the last class, I put a few simple points in this one also. Like last time I said, you don't have to become, try to become something you are already divine.
Right.
So in this class, you said it's a dream, and when you wake up, you still feel like this is also a dream. But I sometimes connect it funnily when I get some official work. No, it's just a dream. Ignore it. So that's okay. So these points today are very touching. This point I was remembering that chapter in Autobiography of a Yogi when Yukteswar travels to Allahabad for Kumbh Mela and he does not see what he wants, but in that place Babaji comes and asks him to be a bridge to the Western and Eastern world and has written this. As you said, we are very fortunate to hear these scriptures and everything in the Kuti Dwapara Yuga that you have said. Scriptures are there to clear misunderstandings, and hopefully we should follow some of the teachings that is there in the scriptures that keeps us reminding us. And the way you taught us, a lot of points have stick to my mind.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, it'll be helpful to revise the book again and then get to see, other points, and it'll hopefully be familiar.
Okay, I have a question. Like in one of the 8 meanness of the heart, you were saying condemnation is also bad or something.
Which one?
No. 8 meanness of the heart.
Do you say condemnation? Is that what you said? Yes.
Yes. So I'm always connecting it to bringing up the kids. So when they are doing something, if we condemn them, this is wrong or right, I still haven't found a way to do it in a very good way. So is that, and also attachment to material things. If we see there are affirmations for getting success, getting money or something, there are affirmations are there. But listening to these kind of classes, I always think God is the goal, forget everything, but still we need to survive in this world. So how to go about it? It's contradictory sometimes.
It does seem that way. Very briefly, just because each of these, the kids and the money, could be a whole class series, what to speak of a class, what to speak of a short answer. But with the kids, the point is to help correct their behavior without passing judgment on it as bad. In other words, this behavior is unhelpful as opposed to, you are bad. Somebody has a hard time keeping their room clean or tidy as opposed to that person is a slob, putting a negative. Basically, you have this behavior and it is not helpful to you and I don't like it. That's the condemnation. And so why is it not right to, for example, scream and cry when you don't get your way, as a child will sometimes do? Because some children don't get that fixed, and even when they're 40, they scream and cry until they get their way. And they get their way, but they don't get any friends. You see, it drives people away, and then they end up lonely because they have nobody around them, because nobody wants to be around a brat. So let's fix it now, for your own sake. But the problem is it arises a reaction in us when the child screams and cries in front of all the relatives or in some place in a public way or for the 68th time this morning, and it just, my nerves can't handle it, and then we say more than we mean, or we add our emotional aversion. I don't like what you're doing, it's upsetting me, stop it so I can feel better. That's wrong. Then we are being the child too. And so we have to first get ourselves together. And I say this, I was not a parent, but a school teacher. And so the children can be just as trying to the school teacher as to the parents in certain ways. In certain ways it's different too, of course. But I had a rule that I would never shout or use a big voice if I was actually upset. But if I wasn't upset, then I wouldn't hesitate to say, "Children, listen up!" And they'd go, but they would listen. But they would know, and I would know that I was never angry. But when I got angry, because it's just a nice drink, because it happens, I would just go, and if I had to say something, I would say, "Let's all gather around now." Yeah, I wouldn't. I never spoke when I had anger, which meant I wouldn't speak sometimes because I didn't want them to hear that acid quality in my voice, because that they would hear, that they would feel. It's easier to be a teacher because you send them home at 3 o'clock. And so as a parent, you don't get to send them anywhere. Nowadays, not even to school for a relief. So anyway, the point is, don't judge yourself too harshly, but focus on this behavior is not helping you, as opposed to it's not helping me. And work on, when you really are upset, don't discipline at that time. But take time to get yourself calmer. That way when you speak, they'll also, if they don't listen at least, they'll have more respect for what you say. But be very patient with yourself, because every child drives their parents crazy. Every parent drives their child crazy to some extent. It's a nature of the karma. It's just so close. So you can't just apply. As one person said, right before you have children yourself, go around to all your friends with children and give them advice on how to raise their children, because this is the last time you will have all the answers. Meaning, once you have children, you realize you don't have all the answers. So again, just find a way that works. But work on yourself, and that will inspire the children too. As for the money thing, we have to function in this world on a material level, so we have more time for the spiritual level. And success in the spiritual world is similar to success in the material world. The point is not to be attached and not to be focused on the material as a goal in itself. That's the trap, and it is all too common. So anyway, one other thing is just laugh. If you can laugh lightly, if you can take it lightly, then that helps. Okay?
Thank you so much for the
Okay.
answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yes.
All right. Vidya, I notice some of the people, see, my screen only holds so many faces, and some people hide off camera or at the bottom of the list by prefacing their names with the letter Z and things like that, but I caught them. No, I'm kidding. I'm not saying Vidya's doing that. But Vidya, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please comment. Solinga.
So thank you first of all for making it, as everyone said, very simple. I hope all the things that were said in it also is as simple, in the sense that in the practical way we can put to practice. But again, it's not that simple as it, sometimes scriptures make it simple though, but it's not that simple. But again, the solution you just said, it's like the guru and the heart, go together, hand in hand. So that's one thing that kind of very, very uplifting at the end of it all. And thank you so much, sir. And also one thing, since I missed the class last week, will it be okay for you to send a recording? The last week's class?
It will be okay. This last week I was not okay, and so I'm sorry. That's why the recording didn't go out, but it will soon. I'm still not fully okay. I sort of rehearsed for this and was able to make an appearance, but anyway, I will get you guys the recording soon.
Okay, sir. Thank
And,
you.
Vidya makes a really important point. She said it's made simple, and the scriptures make it simple, but it isn't so simple. Remember, Sri Yukteswar himself said that a truth is not assimilated with the mind, but with the atoms, something like that. Not with the thoughts, but with the atoms. So, in that way, as she said, developing love, following the Guru, keeping satsanga with good people, that's the way you grow in these things. That's the way you understand the book more. You could do Kriya for a year, be in satsang like this for a year, and what was the other thing? Develop devotion for a year, and then go back to the book, and you would understand it. I mean, any of us would understand it much better through experience, not by just studying with a Sanskrit English dictionary. So it's a very good point to remember what she says. Okay, anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
Are you able to hear me?
I am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for this wonderful session. And generally, after joining Ananda, I found my life is, I found that gradually I'm changing. We are following, a lot of teachings of Yogananda ji, as well as the words we are hearing from the satsang and the other classes, the yogis like you. And it has had a wonderful effect on our daily activities. I find it really amazing, and I'm thankful to Ananda family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. And in fact, it reminds me, now that you say that, I think everybody knows, but just to say it again, we're very fortunate this year to have, speaking of classes, Spiritual Renewal Week happening in a way that we can all attend from India, not necessarily time zone wise, though you can, but certainly in terms of having access to all the classes right after the broadcast. And many of the classes, I think more than half of them, or maybe at least half of them, are pre-recorded, and the videos will be released to people who join the Spiritual Renewal Week. So I'll post that link in the group in case you don't have it already. The whole week of classes, all 7 days, is 2,000 rupees only to attend. And it's never been possible before to do it this way from India. And as Swamiji often said, this is our most important event of the year. And so anyway, to sort of keep this energy going, that's part of why I think we won't have class next week, not next week also, but the week after, because of Spiritual Renewal Week. So please do consider signing up for that, all of you who can, because it's a way all of us can be in, of one mind, of one family, all participating in these classes together. There'll also be kirtans, meditations, sadhanas, things you can follow for that week.
I was able to share with all my friends who thought this is Kali Yuga and give evidence that it is not Kali Yuga. They were all very surprised, and that was a real good sharing I could take from this class. And very many people of my friends also benefited from that.
Oh, Shobha, I'm so glad. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. I mean, telling people that we're in Dwapara Yuga is sort of like telling people that we're in India. They may not agree, but we are. So it's good when they can recognize that fact. Yeah, very good.
That's very nice. And you gave that slide that could be convincing them, the diagram and all.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shobha. Okay, well, Ulagamai?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful class. I did miss the last class, so I was able to have the recording and kind of do a revision because this I think is less than 1% of understanding. So I just try to take notes today. So the one which actually inspired me was the ask and care, where there are so many people who just ask but they don't really care. And it makes a lot of difference that both asking and caring have to come together. So that was really inspiring. I have a doubt, in relation to the last question on the condemnation. I actually had to kind of there was condemnation because of my son didn't do the right thing. He got a very low mark a couple of days back. In the family, so my husband actually heavily condemned him, and I really don't know how to tackle all this, because it's like I know it is not the right thing to do, so going by guidance, what should be my role, and how do we come out of such things? Because the one you told, run and go to so propelling to go to reach God is very key. So that's how I see it. So whenever such things happen at home, I actually go back and I go internally to search for better things. But I think something has to be done, so I really don't know what has to be done. So can you guide me?
Are you talking about that things were done wrong by others and you were feeling that it was sort of to be condemned, or that you had done something that they were condemning?
I was only an evidence, meaning I was just watching over, the condemnation was done by my husband towards my kid because he didn't score marks.
Okay, so your husband condemning your child, that you had to witness this. Yeah, I understand. It can be very hard, and especially in these times of lockdown and, now super lockdown coming on Friday, some people are starting to lose their sense of humor, let's just say. And in some cases, it's quite serious, people who are having a lot of trouble. But some people just aren't well suited to not being in control of their lives, which, like the water on the lotus leaf, we never are in control, but we have the illusion of control. But now all the water droplets are falling off the lotus leaves left and right. And so it can make a lot of tension. I would say the first thing to do is to try to be calm. In other words, a situation like that with tension in the household, the antidote is calmness, not more tension. And so, to start with, how can I myself get calm? How can I be patient? How can I see it from the other person's point of view? Not to agree, but at least to understand, accept, and so on. And then work as you can. It's tricky when two relatives, especially parent-child, are having a problem, because it may be a relationship and a dynamic that has gone on for incarnations. And so it may not be a simple thing of when you say this, this hurts, and so on. Oh, why didn't you say so? And it's solved. Also, we have to be careful because we don't want to be taking sides in a way that makes the other person defensive or shut down. At the same time, there are certain things that are just wrong and can't be done. So the first thing is make sure you're very calm. And as Sister Gyanamata, Master's most advanced woman disciple, said, she said, you can say anything to anyone if you say it with respect and detachment, which is such an important thing, because we first of all respect the other person's right to feel however they want, and detachment meaning we don't feel that they have to actually listen or agree or comply. We are just offering it, especially only if they're open, but we're not forcing them to have a particular response. It's very freeing to us, first of all. And so make sure to find your moment. With many people, when they misbehave, if we say, hey, you did that, that was wrong, they'll say, oh, really? And they'll immediately fight back. But if we say nothing, then usually a day or two later, the person on their own will say, I'm sorry I did that. I really shouldn't have. Because they know they shouldn't have done that. But they lost control in the moment. And if we point that out, they often will just fight back to save face or to deny. Or they're already running a little hot, so they continue to run hot. But if you just let them go and don't say anything, then very often they will come back and they will be apologetic. Or even if they don't come back on their own, it's better, as Swamiji said, don't talk right away, but do talk. So in the heat of the moment, don't say anything because they're already upset. They're not listening anyway. And you're fighting the emotions as opposed to just the behavior. Why not address the behavior when the emotions have calmed down and the person may be more receptive? and also it will give you time to think of a way to bring it up. So don't ever drop anything. But sometimes remember, Swamiji waited 10 years before saying something to somebody. That was a long time. But because he knew if he said it ahead of that time, the person would just shut down and he wouldn't be able to ever say it again. Because when you try to say it again, they say, yeah, you already said that. So you have to pick your time. And so also meditate, pray, if in the case of your son, work with your son without diminishing the father, and not disrespecting him, but just saying, these are things, how can we work with this? I don't know. It's not an easy one by any means. There's no formula. These are just hints. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. Very useful.
Okay, you're most welcome. Okay, everybody. I think on that note, we shall wrap it up. Yes, I hear a voice. It is sort of like Ardhana Ishwara, where it is half Lakshmi, half Sharmila. Lak Sharmila. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Happy to see you and
Yeah.
listen to you, Eugene. Thank you so much for the wonderful
Thank you, Sharmila.
sessions all these weeks. It's very uplifting and it's very nice. Just wanted to thank you, and maybe we can have a repeat mode of these sessions also. It's very, very nice. And
Yes, the repeat session is called the recording. You can repeat as many times as you can. My poor brain needs a rest from all of this now. Phew. But yes, I'm so glad, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Sharmila. And Lakshmi?
I want to make.
Oh, go ahead, Sujata. Just a second. Let's just wait for Lakshmi first.
Okay.
I just wanted to say namaste, Swamiji. It's so wonderful to see you, and it was really the class was really wonderful and heart-opening.
Oh, good. Lakshmi, that's such a wonderful thing to hear, because that is the point. You would think it would be brain-opening, and it is. It's brain-destroying. But the point of it is to be heart-opening, so thank you. I'm so glad that was your response. That's encouraging to me. Okay, Sujata. No, I thought that was Sujata speaking. Was it Suganta?
No, I'm Suganta.
But oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't reading the name. I was hearing the voice. I got it wrong. Please. Solinga.
When you were mentioning about Sister Jnanmata, then I suddenly thought, what about reading Jnanmata's words of wisdom? There are so much in her book which I don't catch. I would like this same session, if you can read some of the letters and then give insights into that, that would be really helpful.
That's a very good idea. I think I'll consider it. I don't know if the whole group can survive the Gyan Avatar followed by the Gyana Mata. But in any case, I personally would be very attracted to do that. We haven't had a Gyana Mata class in a long time. And I know it was a great inspiration to some in particular. So anyway, I'll consider it because, of course, it's very thrilling. So we'll see. Thank you for that idea. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining. Please do give a suggestion if for a class like Suganta just did, if you have one. I may send some suggestions out, or I may just grab one and run with it and hope for the best for all of us to spend more time together, which is just the point, as Lakshmi said, to spend heart-opening time together with these masters, with their thoughts, with these truths. But also in that same line, please keep Spiritual Renewal Week in mind. There's still time to register, but please think about it, because this is where we would go every year, Dharmini and I, to SRW, and then we were so hurt when we couldn't go there physically and couldn't attend online either, because it was only a live broadcast and not available right after, except weeks after. And so now it's something we can either do live or we can do just after. And it's such a joy that they're making it available worldwide. So thank you again, and good night.